Okay, we're going to talk about Rule 1, so starts on page 11. We're not going to cover it real exhaustively tonight. We are going to just hit on the high spots to make sure they're...
Please put the phone on vibrate.
Yeah, put them on vibrate because Jody's in here. He'll be dialing your number.
Jody will call you up.
Yeah, Dennis found out the hard way. All right, so as we're looking at the first page, there's a article number 6 down there. It says referee has authority to rule promptly in the spirit of good sportsmanship on any situation not specifically covered in the rules. The referee's decisions are final in all matters pertaining to the game. So the question I'm going to ask you is, can the crew of officials overrule a referee's decision? They can. Okay, so once he makes that decision, it is final. Yeah, and I would. What I tend to do though is I consult with my partners before I make any major decisions on things like that.
Doug Hudson would go on record.
Yeah, yeah. The rest of them can go on record. Although I'm not sure that's an official term yet.
He went on record one night, said this game is too long, 2:24 in the morning.
Okay, and so then we go down, and the article number 8, that one's pretty interesting as far as interesting goes in this chapter. And it talks about the game officials retain clerical authority over the game through the completion of any reports, including those imposing disqualifications that are responsive to actions occurring while the game officials had jurisdiction. Okay, so once the referee's held the ball up and the crew is walking off the field, let's say a fight between the two teams ensues, what should the crew do?
Keep walking.
Keep walking, because your part of the game has ended. It now belongs to the administration, the game administration. So that's your job, is to keep walking and head on out of the field. It doesn't say anything in here about us turning around and going back out to take care of any of that kind of problem. Okay, then on the next page, we got the field and its markings. They were all pretty much cut and dried. You know what they look like. And the little tents that are out there for yard markers, you know they got to be moved 5 yards off the field for whatever reason. Schools tend to put them right up on the edge. Yard lines that are marked continuous every 5 yards don't go all the way to the edge of the field. They stop 4 inches short. And you all know why that does. They do that, don't you? Now a guy comes up, jumps, makes that catch, and his foot comes down. If there's a break in the line and the sideline, you can see, if you don't see white paint next to his shoe, you know he's just still in bounds. But if that line comes along there, it's going to make it harder for you to judge that call. So that's why they stop a little bit farther out. Then it goes on, talks about the hash marks, the 9-yard marks. We all know about those. Measurements, well, this is one that probably is worth reading. Measurements shall be from the inside edges of the boundary marks. And if you're doing a measurement from out in the wings, don't pick the ball up and spot it somewhere else. First measure it and then go ahead and move the ball. It's always better to do it that way. You tend to be more accurate. The next page, page 14, talks about the pylons. We all know they can be orange, red, or yellow. Crossbars, of course, 10 feet above the playing field, and 23 feet and 4 inches long. And of course, the uprights are another 10 feet, so the top of them should be 20 feet off the ground. And the goal posts shall be padded, and that is one of those deal breakers. If you don't have those goal posts padded, you can't start the game. That's a safety issue. So that's one of those that you need to discover right away when you come out and take the field. If you don't see that, get with the home coach or the administrator of the field and make sure that they're aware that that needs to be taken care of. Then we talk about the football. I always used to think footballs were pigskins, but it says here that they are cowhide, or they can be rubber too. So either one of those is going to be acceptable. And it talks about the different types of dimensions that we have on a football. And obviously you're not going to be out there with a tape measure to measure things and make sure that the football meets all those specifications. But the way that you get around that is you just look for the emblem. Once you see the National Federation emblem on the football, you know that they've taken care of all that. So the ball meets the specifications to be a legal ball. Now, I think it was last year, they added a bunch of different things that are now permissible items to be printed on the ball. You can have your school's name, a logo, you could have a tiger paw on the football. All those kind of things can now be on a football. Even the conference that you're in can be on that, school's name, things like that.
What can't you have on there?
Well,
Commercial logo?
yeah, if Pizza Hut sponsors the pregame meal, you can't put Pizza Hut on there. You could put them in the end zone, on the field, and have an advertisement for them there. But not on the football yet. They don't have that as one of the things. One thing it does say in this section is the stripes. None of these logos that the school has or anything can in any way cross over into that area. That area has to remain solid white. And it tells us those stripes are only located on 2 panels adjacent to the seam. And that's the way they are on this ball. You don't see them on the backside, but you do see them on the front. Okay, and of course, you know that the below 9th grade, they play with a little bit smaller ball. On rule page 16, we got Article 2 tells us that each team shall provide at least 1 legal ball to the referee at the time of game. They assume authority for it. So that's one of those things you need to remember. Although I think there's a way around that. If they don't bring one, they can still play with one team's ball. And another thing that it's worth mentioning, if after the punt, the other team doesn't bring a ball in, and the umpire spots it, and we mark it ready for play, we can just keep right on going with the same ball that the other team was using, because they're all legal balls. And if the team is ball boy is over there playing catch with his buddies and he forgot about the game, we can't wait for him. So I would just say use it. Keep on using whatever ball's out there on the field. Because each team may use any referee-approved ball of its choice. Then it's the referee's job to decide whether the ball meets specifications, and we usually don't do that during the pregame when we meet with the coaches and they bring the balls out. The kicking tee, of course, now that's one of those where it could be no more than 2 inches above the ground. Obviously, we're not going to carry tape measures out on the field. What I suggest that you do is find something on your body that's 2 inches long and use that as a point of reference. I use right there on the joint, right there on the joint of my finger to the tip of my finger. I know that is 2 inches. And that tee is more than that. I know that they probably got an illegal kicking tee. So that's a good way to do it. If everybody does something like that, you don't have to carry the tape measure out there.
You missed that one.
You know he was ignoring it.
Okay, and so let's see. The tee, and I don't believe I've ever had anybody call. If it is a penalty, who knows what the penalty is, what the signal, and what the yardage? If it's an illegal kicking tee, it's an unfair act. Sportsmanlike, 15 yards. So it's not worth the trouble to try to get a taller tee. I guess the taller tee they can get up under it and kick that higher kick, and I guess that's the intent.
The question is, where is it measured from?
From the ground up to
Where's the penalty measured from? Enforcement.
it's how high the ball is off the ground, right?
No, he's saying, where's the basic spot of enforcement?
The unsportsmanlike. Good question. It would have to be from the spot of the foul, which is where the kicking tee sits, right on the 40. So you would go back 15 from the 40. and then they would have
Or
to kick from
whatever,
there.
might be the.
So if that ever comes up, we'll all know how to handle that situation.
Where do you charge the penalty to?
What's that?
Where do you charge the penalty?
Hey, coach.
Well, that coach verified that all of his equipment was legal, so once he does that, he has really taken on a lot of responsibility. Anytime a player is wearing a gold chain or necklace or any of that kind of stuff, he's already verified that they're not doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, he's sticking himself out on a limb.
And the change in the rule this year says, and will not use any illegal equipment. If you look at the rule changes,
Yeah,
coach's verification, will not use any illegal equipment.
right.
So the answer to Rick's question is,
The coach.
goes on the coach.
Yeah, and that's his first. And if he gets one more on sportsmanlike, he has to go sit in the bus.
And if he elevates the ball on a field goal, is the result of the kick good or no good? Is it a touchback or is the kick good?
If he elevates the ball.
If it's high, if
What is it, 2 inches off the ground?
Oh, okay. And the kick would be no good. No good.
Result of the play is a touchback, right?
No, if this, oh, you're thinking if they use it for.
Ball went through the goalpost.
No, it's simultaneous with the snap.
Lawrence.
Hold on. Go ahead.
So you're thinking if they discovered illegal tee after the kick was made.
Right.
At that point, it would have to be a live ball foul, I would think. Because that's when it was,
You were penalized as a live ball foul.
it would have to be, but unsportsmanlike.
Isn't my question.
Okay,
We all agree it's a foul.
right?
What's the result of the play? Are you gonna allow the field goal? That's been called good?
No,
I think we have to take points off the board.
no. Can't allow it.
Okay, but do they decline the penalty, take the touchback? Is it a fumble that went through the upright? Or are you gonna allow the kick, even though you felt it was elevated more than 2 inches off the ground?
Well, all
You gotta know that.
unsportsmanlikes have to be treated as dead ball fouls.
But in that case,
I would say you would back them up
that's
15
the
yards.
last play of the game. You're not gonna have them win the
So if they kicked it from the 10 and made the field goal, they would go back 15 yards and it would be their ball on the 25, fourth and whatever.
Let's make certain we got a clarification. Go ahead, Sam, clear it up for us.
So what I'm saying is, if after the last play of the game, you use illegal tee and goes through, you're not gonna allow that points to stay.
No.
You can check it off.
And enforce the penalty.
You have to enforce it on.
Yeah,
But you're allowing result of the play as a made field goal?
If you accept the
Go
penalty.
back to Rule 1, Article 6.
We're trying to decide whether you accept the penalty
Not
or
specifically
don't.
covered in the-
Can you decline in the game? We know that, are they gonna get another chance is the question.
Yeah. You got to.
That's the question.
Now, that's the spot of the kick, right?
Right.
Correct.
Illegal tee was used.
Yeah.
because there wouldn't be a loss of down.
Otherwise, they take the penalty, if they decline the penalty, it's a field goal, game's over.
Right.
Go back to where the tee was.
You penalize it from the spot of the tee or the spot of the tee?
All but one.
Where it was on the ground, so if it was on the 10 and tee was on the 18, then it would have been penalty from the 18 back.
So in answer to Dennis' question, if they decline the penalty, then it is a field goal. All right, if they decline the penalty, then it is a good field goal.
You agree with that?
All you enforce is under unfair act.
Yeah,
You can do whatever you think unless a referee. It was just illegal equipment.
yeah. The tee wouldn't be
An unfair act, so do you give them options on an unfair act? I guess you have to. No?
Well, it says it's a basic spot foul.
We know it's basic spot. The question is, is the result of the kick good? That's all I'm asking.
No.
Because I've seen conflicting things in the book, in the rule book about that.
We can get you a more clear, definitive answer on that.
Okay.
We all agree it's unsportsmanlike on the coach. We all agree it's marked off on the 10-yard line. We kick the ball.
Or you kick the ball from the
From the spot of the tee, right? Not from the
spot
snap.
of the tee.
We know that.
The result of the play is a field goal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the decline is gonna be a field goal.
Okay, hopefully we won't have that.
That's good.
But if I find one longer than my first joint there, I know what we've got is illegal kicking. Yes, sir.
Falls right there.
I saw the term kicking block, and I know there's.
All right, let's hear what he
there are
says.
Kicking blocks out there, you don't know try.
Yeah.
Try. Is there any difference between that and a regular kicking tee? You know, the kicking tee's got the prongs
Prongs.
stick up, but the block's just a block. So as long as there's someone holding that for a place kick, it doesn't matter whether they use the block or, a regular kicking tee, does it?
It
Are
doesn't,
they-
it doesn't say,
Elevate the ball more than
I've never, as long as it's 2 inches,
yeah.
extra point.
but I've never seen the term kicking block in the rules book.
But a
I think both of them are
It's a
referred
tee.
to as a
Kicking
kicking
ball.
tee. Because I don't see any differentiation right here in Article 4, it just says a kicking tee.
Correct. They're two different designs, but they're both kicking tees.
And it shall be made of a pliable material which elevates the lowest point of the ball no more than 2 inches above the ground. So that's the definition of it. I think either one of those would fit the definition. Then the next Article 5 talks about our chains and the line to gain, visible line to gain indicators. Then it also, in that subparagraph A, it talks about the shall be the equipment, and it says who is in charge of checking the equipment to indicate accuracy prior to the game, and it's not just the linesman. So it's all of us game officials shall check the line to gain equipment. If that ever came up on a test, you probably know that it's not just the linesman's fault if that equipment turns out to be faulty or 2 inches or 4 inches short of what it should be. So anyway, it's just the whole crew. And remember that the chain crew has to set up 2 yards outside the sidelines, opposite the press box. And a lot of times the chain crews that have been around for a long, long time don't like that idea because they've been used to doing it a different way. But you just got to keep reminding them that it's about player safeties and their safety, and that's why we do it the way we do it. In Article 6, down there at the very bottom page, talks about a timing device referred to as a game clock. And we all know that our timing device, in most of all cases, is going to be that scoreboard. And then it talks about the operator shall be approved by the referee. And that procedure is usually done during that pregame time when the clock operator walks down and meets the referee and shakes hands with him and have conversation.
Usually.
At that point, that's when you're approving him as the clock operator. And if you saw some problems with him at that point, I think that's when you need to talk with the game administrator. Then the next page, at the start of the top of the page, we have something very new here, so let's read it and make sure we all know what they're talking about. Other than replay and television monitoring equipment, game officials may use supplemental equipment to aid in game administration as authorized by state association. Who can give me an example of this supplementary equipment we use?
Communication. Replay.
Use replay.
Would those microphones and headsets be an example? What about the tape recorder that the linesman uses to record penalties?
Yes.
That would probably be 2 good examples if you had to give an example of those. But those are things that we can use now. So if a crew has the headsets on, then the official that's closest, let's say a kick goes out of bounds, he could ask the coach, do you want him to re-kick it, or do you want to take it off the spot? He can then tell the umpire and the rest of the crew what the coach's decision is. We all are on the same page at the same time. That technology hasn't quite gotten to us yet, but it's not very far away, I don't think. So each team has to designate a player as field captain, but we all know as a matter of practice, along with talking to the captain about decisions and options, we try to do it in a way that the coach is close enough to hear in case it's one of those where it's either going to be 3rd and 18 or 4th and 8, and you don't really know which way the coach would think on that one. We want to make sure that that coach gets to weigh in on that decision, because that team captain may make a decision that his coach regrets later on. So try to make sure the coach can hear what you're explaining to him. And the next page, on page 18, we talk about mandatory equipment. Of course, we all know about these, the helmets, the face masks, all the way down the line. And this is, there is a little tiny print here which says the coach's pre-game verification to the referee, and they say another game official, but for us it's all, for the rest of the crew, that all players are legally equipped and in compliance with the rules, includes exterior warning label on the back of the helmet. Gotta have all that stuff. There are certain situations where the jersey doesn't have to be tucked in, if it only comes up just to the top of the pants, but if it is a longer one, the player has to have the jersey tucked in. Is that something you'd send them to the sidelines for if their jersey was out?
If they don't put it in.
Not wearing their equipment properly, so to me that sounds like it meets the criteria.
And they have to stay on one play this year.
Stay out one play. Of course, we all know the visiting team is responsible for avoidance of two teams wearing the same colors on a game night. But anytime there's any doubt, the referee is going to send the team in that's at home, because they've got an extra set of jerseys in the locker room, so the home team's usually the one that has to change. It doesn't mention anything about penalties involved on that. The numbers can only be 1 through 99, so if you see any test questions about a 0 being a legal number, that is in basketball but not in football. Color and style of numbers shall be the same on the front and on the back of the jersey. And then the next page, we talk about page 20, pads and protective equipment. These are all things that we've got to have on: hip pads, knee pads, shoulder pads. We all know about these. Tailbone pads, some of those are tough to tell whether I guess you just got to ask them to get your pads on. And hopefully they'll give you the straightforward answer. Biggest problem we have, of course, is these players that want to have their knees uncovered. So I think we're all on the same page this year on that, and last year too. If they're lining up at the line of scrimmage and the quarterback goes under center and that wide receiver's already got those things pulled up because he thinks he's going to have to run fast and get downfield, we got to blow the play dead right then, and he's got to go out. Everybody agrees with that, right? And then we got to see some other pads, shoes. Yeah, you got to remember, anybody comes out with gymnastic slippers, send them back to the sidelines. Ski boots, logger boots, don't let them come out there. Cleats, obviously the manufacturers that make these shoes know what is legal and what isn't. Here again, we're not going to measure the cleats for the length to see if they're a half an inch, all that kind of stuff. Article 2, this talks about auxiliary equipment. And here's an acronym I invented for you guys to help you remember who takes care of auxiliary equipment. Just say all your vowels, A, E, I, O, U, and you'll remember it. Auxiliary equipment is okayed by the umpire. There you go. Got it. And he's the one that looks at forearm pads, gloves, things like that. You can have some kinds of gloves that are what they call non-athletic gloves that are worn just for warmth, like a pair of work gloves. Those don't have to have the symbols on them. So if you've got a game in November and the linesman is wearing a pair of those kind of gloves, that is not considered illegal equipment, even though it doesn't have the emblem. Now, there are some things in Article 3 that they talk about that is considered illegal equipment, and much of that is any equipment which, in the opinion of the umpire, is a dangerous, confusing, or inappropriate. So illegal equipment shall always include, but it's not limited to these. And then it goes on and enumerates and lists some of these different things. What are some of the things that we usually see in the way of illegal equipment that we need to be watching for in a game? it's gonna give an advantage to that team. What's that?
Bands around the base.
Oh, yeah, you can't let them do those. Yeah, I don't think they're gaining advantage, but they see college or pros wearing them or whatever. But yeah, those are the kind of things you gotta tell them, move that band down or else they send them out. And a lot of times these fellas, especially the running backs, will take their jersey and put it up under that back pad so that the pad's hanging out. I tell them, you gotta get that fixed before the next play. And if they don't, I would send them out on that too. They know the rules. And once you send them out one time, they know it the rest of the season. Hard and unyielding guards and casts. Of course, those are all things that are checked during the pregame by the umpire. They have to have a slow recovery, closed cell padding on them so that there's no risk of injury to other players about them. Anytime you see knee braces worn, they have to be under the pants, at least to as far down as the pants go. If they're worn on top of the pants, that's not legal, and those players can't participate in the game until they put them underneath their pants. There are exceptions to electronic communication devices for players, as long as the player is outside the 9-yard marks, which are, at that time he can have a telephone conference with the offensive coordinator up in the box or whoever else he needs to talk to. We're going to talk about eye shade. We all know that they can wear that as long as it's one solid streak and doesn't have logos, symbols, or biblical references or any of that kind of stuff. Eye shields, of course, attached to the helmet have to be clear without any tinting present. And the player, although the player can wear a pair of sunglasses underneath that. That seems odd, but that's the way it goes. Jewelry, if you see a player with a necklace hanging out and you know there's no medical alert attached to it, he's just wearing one of them big heavy gold necklaces, that is illegal equipment. Play cards, a lot of times, one comes to mind is BC's quarterback. He likes to wear his play card on the belt. You can't wear them on the belt. It's got to be on the arm. And that's one of those where we're not allowed them to come in the game with them on anywhere except their arm. Now, Article 4, page 23, this is the big one. There's a lot of gray in this one, so there's a lot of new language. So let's just pick it apart piece by piece. Starts out by saying, prior to the start of the game, the head coach shall be responsible for verifying to the referee and another game official, for us it's the whole crew, that all his players are legally equipped in compliance with these rules and will use no illegal equipment. The kicking team. All right, so then any questions regarding legality of a player's equipment or the presence of required equipment shall be resolved by the umpire. So, any questions about that language that's been inserted? Everybody understand it? So the coach is making his commitment. That means he's setting himself up, though, for a possible unsportsmanlike if anybody on the team decides to violate that. And then we go to Article 5. When any required player equipment is missing or worn improperly, an official's timeout shall be declared if the missing or improperly worn equipment is detected during the down or subsequent dead ball action related to the down without being directly attributed to a foul by an opponent, or if a player is wearing otherwise legal equipment in an illegal manner, the player shall be replaced for at least one down, unless halftime, overtime, or intermission occurs. If proper and legal equipment has become improperly worn through use, but prompt repair is possible and does not delay the ready for play signal for more than 25 seconds, such repair may be made without replacing the player. Who would time the 25 seconds? I believe that would be the back judge that would take care of that. And if he finds that team manager is still working on the equipment after 25 seconds, I believe he would blow the whistle. We'd have to have that player go out of the game.
Get a timeout, bind and stay in if they got fixed?
You know, they don't say that in here. I know in certain situations in basketball, you can do that. You know, if you got blood on your uniform, things like that. But it doesn't say in here if you could buy it back.
What's gonna be the consensus of,
What do you guys think? If they called timeout and he was ready at the end of the timeout, would you deny him being able to come back in?
No.
I think I would let him play.
if we send him out?
If you didn't send him out.
Didn't send him out.
You didn't send him out to begin with.
No.
So, if you send him out for illegal equipment, or not proper equipment, you send him out, can a timeout buy him? back?
No,
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 not then.
no.
No.
But this is not illegal, it's just the way they're describing it. Let's say a chin strap won't snap again. For whatever reason, the buckle broke or whatever. He's got 3 points, but fourth one won't snap.
But I'm talking about.
He's gotta go out.
They don't cover their knees or something, we send them out for a play because they keep.
No, that's not faulty, yeah, that's not broken or faulty equipment. That's just a clear case where we gotta send him
It
out.
says warning properly as well.
What's that?
It says warning properly.
Yeah.
So my question is gonna be, are we going, if we send him out because his equipment is warning properly, are we going to be, allow them to have a timeout to get him back?
No.
The
No,
book does not address that.
says that.
No.
Look down under the gray print.
If proper and legal equipment has become improperly worn through use. Yeah,
Matt talked about a couple different things.
if the equipment's become improperly worn through use,
Use.
repairs possible.
That's the difference.
Says without replacement player purchase one. So if they call a timeout, it's because they're over their 25 seconds, they're in, that adds to the 25 seconds, right? And it says without replacing the player. So to me, the player doesn't have to be replaced.
Yeah, we give them the opportunity to fix it if the trainer can get out there and make a field repair.
But if he can't, and he calls a timeout, why is that any different than him doing it in 25 seconds?
Let me think on that.
It's not.
I don't think there is any difference. I don't think, as long as they request a timeout before we send him off,
Okay.
we would tell them, what we would do is say, okay, it's 25 seconds or up, and you haven't been able to repair it, so we're gonna have a replacement. At that point, if they call a timeout, I think the player can still come back in, because it's not like the fella that pulls his knee pads up and tries to run a running play with his knee pads up. So I think we gotta be, treat that as a different situation.
Burns the timeout, it says timeout.
Yeah.
He can call timeout
I
for
didn't send the player off.
whatever reason he wants. Yeah. He can call timeout for whatever reason he wants.
And while we're on this one, flip quickly to page 44. We're going to read what it refers to Rule 3-5-10B and 3.5-10E. So go to bottom of 44, and it starts there. I'm going to read it, and we'll talk about this here. It says, under Article 10, an official's timeout, which is not charged to either team, occurs, and the player shall be replaced for at least one down unless halftime or overtime occurs when, and then it enumerates A, B, C, D. Let's go down to E, which is the new one. And a player shall, and it's, so let me pick up where I was reading again. The player shall be replaced for at least one down unless halftime occurs for any required player equipment is missing or improperly worn. That might be the answer to our question right there.
That's an official timeout.
That's the official timeout.
If the official has to stop the clock. And with the illustration we're using with the chin strap, let's say with the broken tab,
It's gotta go.
he hasn't caught,
Looking at time.
we do stop the clock for that, don't we? We're not gonna keep the clock running.
25 seconds.
24 seconds if he says, all right, we need a timeout.
Give him time out, let him come back, let's play.
He gets to come out.
Yes.
Good time. You want to waste your time? Let him waste time.
Bruce, are we thinking on the same lines as the author of this?
No.
All right,
Let's put it this way.
yeah.
If we call timeout, and send them out, they're not gonna buy the way back.
Right.
Just like the blood on the jersey. If we recognize blood's on the jersey, call timeout, send him out, he's out one day, right? One play. We're gonna treat this the same way. But if the coach recognizes it, calls timeout, get him out there and changes his jersey or equipment, he can come back in, because we didn't do it. Right?
Common sense.
Can I answer that? Can I answer that?
Sure.
I think what we were talking about, if
Listen out, guys. Here you go.
if we see a player and his equipment is not proper, and we said, hey, guy, fix that, and he can't fix it, and then his coach calls timeout, he just got a timeout. And he can come back in the game. Yeah. But what Bruce is saying, if we call timeout and say, hey, you got improper equipment, you got to go off, then he's off for a play.
But the rule says he's got 25 seconds to fix it.
If the difference is if he starts to fix it, if we say fix it, and he's got 20, and we don't call timeout, we just say fix it. The clock's still running.
The rule says if it was a foul or became illegal through use of the foul, they have 25 seconds. We discover he's just not wearing it right, or it's illegal, we send him out, he's out.
Yeah.
Two different things that we're talking
Right.
about.
And it's 25 seconds if he doesn't delay the ready for play. We're not talking about stopping the whole game clock. He's just not delaying the ready for play. Hey, fix it, guy. He can buckle it right up, or he buckles it up, then we go.
I'd send him out and then let him call timeout, but that's one less we have to worry about later.
There you go. That's the way that.
One less thing I gotta go do Monday.
All right, so I would suggest that you read and reread that one several times. That just treat it like, well, it's a very long sentence, and those are kind of you got to take it and break it down piece by piece. But read it about 3 or 4 times, and I think it'll start to bear more light. But there are some areas of it that could be cause for debate. So then we go to the next section, which is coaches' field equipment. They can use just about any kind of electronic equipment nowadays. But they can't carry it with them outside the 9-yard marks. Well, I guess they can technically, but they can't use it outside the 9-yard mark. So if you see a coach walking out and he's got a cell phone on him, if you're the wing official, you may want to just follow him closely to make sure he's not using it while he's out there in the hut. I guess it's the best advice we have. And everybody got 2 weeks ago, the Rule 1 test. I hope everybody's worked on it. Is there questions that anybody has on the questions that were in this test? It was emailed by Sam, I want to say 2 weeks ago, right? Maybe 2.5, but it's a good one. It's got 70 questions that cover this rule. Is there any other questions that anybody has right now about anything in Rule 1 in the book? Any questions? Yes?
Let's go back to the illegal tee for a second.
Okay.
If you look back in Rule 9, and we mentioned this when we were going over it, we said we would charge that to the head coach. Right? Doesn't matter then, because Rule 9 says that is not charged to the head coach for purposes of unsportsmanlike conduct and his being disqualified. So it's an unsportsmanlike act. It is on the coach, but we don't allow this as one of the two for him being ejected. Your rule book says 9, 10, 3, and 4. It's actually 9, 9, 3, and 4. So if you go back, and we'll correct that when we get Rule 9. But do everything you can to keep from ejecting the coach. And certainly don't use that illegal equipment or illegal tee.
So Bruce, on the ball elevated, we determined earlier that the kick is good unless they accept the penalty, as opposed to the holder juggles the ball and the ball's lying there on the ground and he kicks the ball illegally through the uprights because it wasn't being held properly, that's a fumble that went through the uprights, and that's no good, right?
Well, that's an illegal.
That's an illegal kick, and that could be declined.
May I?
Please do.
What, and I wrote some questions here, you won't see them again, but I wrote them in. What if we have the illegal tee on the field, and the ball is muffed by the holder, he gets up and throws a touchdown pass?
Okay.
Do we have anything?
No.
Why not?
It's
It's in the game. It's illegal equipment in the game.
I don't think.
It's in the game.
I say nothing. Are we sure? No. Yeah.
You said the ball should not be.
I know you're bluffing.
Doesn't say the ball has to be kicked off.
It's illegal equipment in the game.
He says you use it no way kicking.
Well, it says use a kicking tee.
First of all, no one in here has ever seen an illegal tee.
No.
Have you?
No.
Actually called it?
He didn't use it.
A block of wood?
No, he had the kicking tee and then the orange tee on top, and he picked it up. And I saw him kicking before the game. I said, you can't do that
Before the game.
before the game.
So, you've never seen one,
During a game.
again, listen to my question. You've never seen this in a game, right?
No.
Never have. But in preventive officiating, if you see these, and it's obvious when they come in there like that one, they come in there, you'll keep them from using it, so you don't have a penalty on anyone else. But 43 years, I've never seen nor heard of anybody using it. And Marty Simpson used to use the top of a 2-liter bottle.
Yeah.
He cut that off and taped it up and used it in high school as a kicking tee. None of us ever measured it, I can tell you that.
It was more than 2 inches, about 4.5 inches. And it was taped up with black tape.
This discussion is just for common sense approach in a ball game.
A kick made not in manner of a free kick or a scrimmage kick. A legal kicking tee has to be used during a scrimmage kick. So, do we have an illegal kick as well as an illegal kicking tee?
So multiple foul.
Multiple foul?
Good question.
You know,
Good question.
Well, it falls on the unfair act, and the unfair act, the referee can do anything he wants to, right?
Yeah.
So you would steer him to choose which one that benefits. Illegal equipment or unsportsmanlike, unfair act.
Unfair act. That's an unfair act.
If we don't know it, I guarantee you a captain and a coach might know it. So our referee will have to say, if you want the unsportsmanlike, we're gonna measure 15 from here, and we'll have to do over, right?
well, it's good. Just presenting that question, though, if it's not a legal kick.
No, we're gonna do it. We're playing it down.
If it's scored
Well, you're not gonna score one.
Right. Either way. Good question.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Pete. All right.
Thanks, Pete.